Hello everyone, this is Tactical Lich here, and today we are back to Total Warhammer 2 after the blunder, that is patch 1.3 of Game 3. So, in today's battle we will be seeing some drive-by shooting between the Tomb Kings and the Dark Elves. For the Tomb Kings, they have a whole bunch of skeleton archer chariots, not the most popular pick, but would be interesting to see them fight against the staple of Dark Elves, the Scourge Runner chariots. Now for the front line, we have a whole bunch of skeleton warriors, as usual, that staple Tomb King chaff. At the back, skeleton spears, one of them the Scorpion Legion, providing some extra poison attacks. And for leadership, we have a Tomb Prince and also DJ Katapt on his Casket of Soul DJ booth, playing a mixtape of dead people screaming and wailing inside that casket super metal. Combined with that armor-piercing artillery, we have even more anti-infantry power in the form of Tomb Scorpions. Now for the Edge Lords, we have a front line of Black Ark Corsairs, basically heavy armor and anti-infantry, great for clearing out skeleton chaff. At the back, a couple Blackguards for dealing with constructs and also some Dread Spears. Of course, we also have some Cold One Knights with their anti-large armor piercing, would be great to deal with Tomb King's cavalry and more constructs. And of course, staple of Scourge Runner chariots times 3 of them. You can see that this build is really geared towards dealing with the Tomb King's constructs with all the anti-large, including all the firepower from the Scourge Runners. They're even led by Rakarth on his Scourge Runner chariot. For the spellcasting department, we have a Burning Hand, the bane of all skeleton infantry, and also the Flaming Sword of Ruin, and that's basically it for army builds. Now let's get the battle started. The battle of drive-by shooting, of course, begins with drive-by shooting. With a bunch of chariots poking damage at each other, you can see that the skeleton archer chariots already taking some damage, losing a single unit model from the anti-large armor piercing shots of these Scourge Runner chariots, while they themselves not taking a lot of damage from the lack of armor piercing on these skeleton archers. Now, the Tomb Kings push forward with the Tomb Scorpions, probably a mistake here, as they have overextended, now isolated, and left to the mercy of these Cold One Knights who, well, they are Dark Elves. They do not care about mercy and will be surrounding the Tomb Scorpions, picking it apart with that anti-large armor piercing. Although that does expose them to the skeleton archer chariots, able to fire at their flanks and hopefully negate their missile block chance on their shields. And you can see there are already a few models down from all those archers' focus fire, while the Tomb Scorpion will continue to tank with that really timely Neru's incantation of protection from DJ Katapt. The frontline engagement though has now truly begun, with a bunch of Tomb Guards and Skeleton Warriors blocking up the Black Ark Corsairs. However, the Blackguards has pushed through, the Skeleton Spears are now pinning them down. The Root Sandstorm is being dropped from DJ Katapt here, hoping to rip apart these Blackguards, but unfortunately, the root of this spell cast is not exactly the greatest here, going into the Black Ark Corsairs, but doing only minor damage to the Blackguards of Nagaron. With all the Dark Elf infantry distracted by skeletons, these Cold One Knights are being pinned and picked apart by a charge from these skeleton chariots isolated from their infantry support. They're actually terrified by the presence of the Tomb Scorpion, the second one in fact due to the first one being finished off already, and in the end they will be routed, truly a shame to their Druki pride. Although there are still the Scourge Runners shooting from behind, to trying to pick apart all these chariots and Tomb Scorpions before they can do more damage to the expensive Dark Elf infantry with their anti-infantry attacks. With the first line of Skeleton Warriors broken and even the Tomb Gods are no longer holding too well, the Skeleton Spears are being pushed forward, hoping to block off these Blackguards to buy more time for DJ Katapt unleashing as many souls from his casket as possible upon his enemy lines to bring havoc and destruction to them. However, this would be a really nice opportunity for a Burning Head, but unfortunately it seems that the Dark Elf player has their attention elsewhere, as the Skeleton Chariots are flooding their backline here with the summon of Shooties, pressuring all these Scourge Runner chariots. They'll be pushing through their own man, pulling through these poor skeletons who doesn't have the best mass to block in these kind of chariot charges. And then they will be just extracting themselves and going after DJ Katapt, silencing his firepower for now, while the Fire Sorcerers actually managed to drop a Burning Head onto a bunch of the Cash Scorpion Legion, killing a whole bunch of skeleton infantry and also my frame rate, finally clearing out all the Tomb King's chaff, allowing the Blackguards and Spears to move on to the backlines and finally start working on Katapt the leadership. But Katapt with a beautiful retaliation, placing an AoE spell right in the middle of all these expensive infantry. Black Gods being finished off by Ushabtis due to the heavy damage of the spell, as well as the Dread Spears just being ripped apart by the Root Sandstorm. Even the Black God Corsairs took some minor damage from it. Suddenly, the infantry situation is no longer favorable for the Dark Elves, as their only infantry left are pretty much bogged down by a bunch of skeleton spears on the back over here, while the chariots are being isolated by armor-piercing entities like the Tomb Prince, the Tomb Scorpion guarding Katep, and then there's a bunch of skeleton archers chasing down whatever troops they got into the Tomb King's backline. Fire Sorceress being surrounded by chariots, her infantry size would not be beneficial against that bulldozing charges of the skeleton archers, who are still kind of doing some drive-by shooting fire at will after all, and hopefully to pick apart enemy units like the Sorcerers of Fire and, of course, these Scourge Runner chariots who are buffed up by that Flaming Sword of Ruin with extra missile damage and also flaming damage, hopefully doing some nice damage to the fire weaknesses of these Tomb King's units. But unfortunately, it seems that only the Tomb Prince really have that flaming weakness. Other than that, the constructs here did not have that kind of problem. On top of that, Flaming Sword only buffs space missile damage, which the Scourge Runners won't be benefiting from because most of their damage is armor piercing anyways. So these Tomb King units didn't have any problem routing this poor Sorceress of Fire, and she won't be coming back, with these high mass, high mobility chariot unit pushing her around. But now it seems that the skeleton archer chariots are going back into drive-by shooting mode, now pushing for the Scourge Runners here, using their bow fire to kind of chip away the health of these Scourge Runners who are now running out of ammo. A great news for the Tomb Kings, since they won't be getting any more firepower in their way, and Katep can safely fire at the back, not needing to worry about some random ballista shot shooting him in the face. Now back to the chariot fight. This might be an overextension here, with the skeleton archer chariots being surrounded by a bunch of better melee combat Scourge Runner chariots. You can see that the melee stats indeed are better right now, with the chevrons gained from doing damage to Tomb King's army. And they will be pushed off with the support of Rakarth, as Rakarth buffs himself with that Beast Slaver, granting extra melee damage and anti-large to himself. On the far side, almost all of the Dark Elf infantry are gone, leaving only the Black Ark Corsairs, though they're extremely battered right now. That's most likely because they couldn't stand the death metal from Katef's DJ Booth of Souls. And the Scourge Runners being tied down by the skeleton archer chariots are unable to shut him down, so one last volley from Katep landing into the Black Ark Corsairs before Rakarth charges in, drags Katep into melee, shutting down his music career. With the Edgelord on wheels bumping into the death metal DJ booth, Rakarth should be doing some nice damage to Katep, since Katep's melee stats on his Cascade of Souls is basically abysmal with only 20 melee defense. So the two will be humping and bumping for a few seconds, and then Rakarth will be pulling back, trying to utilize that charge damage again, and also avoid being stuck against the Tomb Prince, who does have anti-large and armor piercing, while the rest of the Scourge Runners going in for one last charge, one last hurrah pretty much. The spell doesn't really do much against these low entity count units, but DJ Katep might as well use up all his magic before his health runs out, since he is pinned down by a bunch of chariots and have nowhere to go, being smacked by Rakarth from behind. Rakarth, with one final blow, finishes off the Tomb King's leadership, but it's pretty much too little too late for him, as the balance of power is in the favor of the Tomb Kings. And with one final charge from the Tomb Scorpion, Rakarth is terrified and runs away from the Tomb King's construct, bringing shame to all the Beast Masters among Dark Elves. GG to both players here. Big thanks to Mr. Tufel for sending in this replay. Now, I said this is a replay of drive-by shooting, but really the Tomb King side, we have Katep doing all the heavy lifting, getting over 230 kills and almost 3k worth of damage value, making some quality music with the cries of the souls in his casket and the pain of his enemies. The combination of the artillery shots and the sandstorm placement basically wiped out half of their opponent's infantry, eliminating the support for the Dark Elf larger entities like the Scourge Runners and Cold One Knights, giving the Tomb Kings a chance to use their own archer chariots, which are more numerous and probably more cost efficient in fighting other chariots, to bring down the Scourge Runners. As expected, the infantry of Tomb Kings didn't really do too much here, since they are, well, skeletons, and the Tomb Scorpions being heavily targeted by Scourge Runner armor-piercing shots was rather limited in terms of effectiveness. Now the Tomb Prince though did some nice damage with the anti-large armor-piercing, and the chariots themselves barely earning back their value. Really, the MVP of the entire Tomb King's army is DJ Katep. Now for the Dark Elves army here, Of course, the Sorcerers of Fire using that Burning Head was really lethal to the skeleton frontline, but the problem is the Blackguard Corsairs and the Blackguards of Nagaron basically got wiped by one-man Katep himself, and then the Cold War Knights were not able to earn back too much value. One of them earned back their own value, the other one not so much, being heavily focused by the Archer Fire, and the other one also took some heavy casualties from Katep's firepower. So of course, as usual, Scourge Runner Chariots, anti-large armor piercing, getting a chevron each for the damage against enemy chariots and Tomb Scorpions. And last but not least, where Karth himself is also a great anti-large champion with his Scourge Runner Chariots and really decent melee stats overall, able to earn back 2,300 value, but in the end without infantry support was basically beaten back by a bunch of skeleton chariots instead and terrified by the Tomb Scorpion, since he himself does not have immune to psychology. And yeah, that's basically it for today's battle. I hope viewers you all enjoy it, and if you do, remember to hit the like and subscribe to keep an eye out on any new video uploads. I'll be doing more battle replays like this one, wild army builds, and also tips and strategies for Total Warhammer multiplayer. If you have any replays that you want to share, feel free to drop by my Discord or send me an email with the replay file attached. I'll be sure to check them out. And yeah, that's basically it for today. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Tactical Lich, signing out.